Superman 2 is a 1980 superhero film directed by Richard Lester and written by Mario Puzo, based on the DC Comics character Superman. It is the second installment in the Superman film series and a sequel to Superman from 1978. Welcome back to DC Movie Rewind, where we look back at every live-action DC movie. Today we are discussing Superman 2. In 1977, producers Alexander and Ilya Salkind decided that they would film Superman and its sequel simultaneously. Principal photography began in March 1977 and ended in October 1978. Tensions rose between original director Richard Donner and the producers, as a result of which a decision was made to stop filming the sequel, 75% of which had already been completed, and simply finish the first film. Now, let's talk about the production.
No. Kneel before sword.
The movie was produced by Dovemead Ltd. And distributed by Warner Bros. It was directed by Richard Donner to begin with, but switched to Richard Lester. The movie was written by Mario Puzo again, and also produced by Pierre Spengler again. Principal photography for both Superman films began on March 28, 1977, at Pinewood Studios for the Krypton scenes, but by May 1977, production had run 2 weeks behind schedule. It was reported that Donner had developed tensions with Alexander and Ilya Salkind and Pierre Spengler concerning the escalating production budget and production schedule. Donner responded by claiming he was never given a budget. In July 1977, Richard Lester, who had previously directed the Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers movies for the Salkinds, came on board the project as an uncredited associate producer and intermediary on Superman to mediate the relationship between Donner and the Salkinds, who were no longer on speaking terms. Prior to this, Lester had won a lawsuit against the Salkinds for money still owed to him for making the films, but the assets were held in legal entanglements in the Bahamas. The Salkinds then offered to compensate him if he would help on the Superman films, in which Lester became a second unit director, which he and Donner formed an effective partnership. By October 1977, Gene Hackman, Ned Beatty, and Valerie Perrine had completed their scenes. They were all under contract to finish both pictures. Nevertheless, with months left of filming, the Salkinds had halted filming Superman 2, of which Donner had shot 75%, to focus on finishing Superman. During the pause in filming, the Salkinds agreed to a negative pickup deal with Warner Bros. Pictures, granting the studio rights to foreign distribution and television airings in exchange for more financing. 2 days after the first film's general release, Marlon Brando had sued the Salkinds for $50 million, claiming he had never received his percentage of the film's gross and filed the restraining order to prevent the use of his likeness. While his restraining order request was thrown out, Brando received $15 million from the settlement. Following this, producers Alexander and Ilya Salkind announced that Marlon Brando's completed scenes for Superman 2 would be excised from the movie to avoid having to pay the actor the reported 11.75% of gross U.S. box office takings he was now demanding for his performance in the sequel. As Donner had become unavailable because he was promoting Superman in Europe, the Salkinds approached Guy Hamilton to take over directional reins for Superman 2, since Lester was filming a movie called Cuba at the time. Hamilton was unavailable, but by the time Superman 2 was ready to begin filming, Lester had completed Cuba and was available to direct. Eventually, on March 15, 1979, the Salkinds decided to replace Donner with Richard Lester. The decision to replace Donner was controversial amongst the cast and crew. Creative consultant Tom Mankiewicz was approached by Terry Semel, then a Warner Bros. Vice President, to return for the sequel, but he declined out of loyalty to Donner. Editor Stuart Baird also declined to return for the sequel. Gene Hackman declined to return for reshoots, which necessitated the use of a body double and voice personator for several scenes. To replace Mankiewicz, Superman's co-screenwriters David and Leslie Newman were then brought back to retool the script, constructing a new opening and ending. The new script featured newly conceived scenes such as a new opening involving Superman thwarting the nuclear terrorists at the Eiffel Tower, Clark rescuing Lois at Niagara Falls, and a new ending in which Clark causes Lois to forget his secret identity through a hypnotic kiss. Furthermore, cinematographer Jeffrey Unsworth had died before the release of Superman. Lester then brought on cinematographer Robert Painter to have the film evoke the garish color scheme of the comics. Another replacement happened when production designer John Barry suddenly collapsed on the nearby set of The Empire Strikes Back and died from meningitis. Peter Merton was then hired in Barry's place. Before filming was to begin, Christopher Reeve was initially unavailable as he had agreed to star in the film Somewhere in Time, 5 months into the production shutdown, by which time his contract to shoot both Superman films back-to-back had expired. Reeve had claimed that 12 hours after his casting was announced, he received a letter from the producers to be available for Superman 2 on July 16th, which was only 5 days after he was to finish filming Somewhere in Time. In March 1979, the Salkinds filed suit against Reeve, alleging he had breached his contract by walking off the sequel. Furthermore, Reeve had reservations with Lester in the Newman script following the departure of Donner. During the renegotiation of his contract, Reeve agreed to the financial terms, but demanded more artistic control. Filming for Superman 2 recommenced in September 1979 at Pinewood Studios. The remaining sequences left to be shot included the scenes of the supervillains in Midwest America and the battle in Metropolis. With Brando cut from the film, the decision was made to reshoot the scene in which Clark confesses his love for Lois and surrender his powers. Another scene, as written in the film's original shooting script and shot, was to have Jor-El restore his powers by reaching out to him in a tableau reminiscent of the painting The Creation of Adam, but the younger Salkind felt it was over the top. The first scene was reshot with actress Susannah York taking Brando's place, while the restoration of Superman's powers would take place off-screen. Location shooting took place in Canada, Paris, Norway, and St. Lucia. The Metropolis scenes, in contrast to the first film where they were filmed on location in New York, were filmed entirely on the backlot at Pinewood. The East Houston, Idaho scenes were shot on the Chobham Common in Surrey, 30 miles from London. Throughout filming, Lester opted to retain his directorial technique for the 3-camera setup while shooting scenes, which frustrated the actors as they did not know where they were being filmed for their close-ups. However, Reeve noted that it made production move at a faster pace. Filming was completed on March 10, 1980. Due to budgetary reasons and actors being unavailable, key scenes filmed by Donner were added to the final film. Since the Lester footage was shot 2 years later, continuity errors are present in the physique and styling of stars Margot Kidder and Christopher Reeve. In Donner's footage, Reeve appears less bulked, as he was still gaining muscle for the part. Kidder also has dramatic changes throughout. In the montage of Lester-Donner material, shot inside the Daily Planet in the Fortress of Solitude near the movie's conclusion, her hairstyle, hair color, and even makeup are all inconsistent. Kidder's physical appearance in the Lester footage is noticeably different. During the scenes shot for Donner, she appears slender, whereas in the Lester footage, she looks thinner. Before the film's release, Warner Bros. Had appealed to the Directors Guild of America to arbitrate the appropriate co-director credit, in which they argued Lester cannot be credited unless he shot 40% of the film.
General, haven't you ever heard of freedom of the press?
Superman,
Thank God. I mean, get him!
Come to me, son of Jor-El! Kneel before Zod!
During a preview of the finished film, Warner Bros. Executives had hoped to maximize its box office returns by releasing the film in every part of the world during their peak movie-going period. The film first premiered in Australia on Thursday, December 4th, 1980. The film was widely released to theaters on June 19th, 1981. It stars Gene Hackman, Christopher Reeve, Ned Beatty, Jackie Cooper, Sarah Douglas, Margot Kidder, Jack O'Halloran, Valerie Perrine, Susannah York, Clifton James, E.G. Marshall, Marc McClure, and Terence Stamp. It had a budget of $54 million and made $216 million in the box office. It currently has an 88% critic score and a 76% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, a 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb, and an 83 Metacritic score. The film opened on 19 screens in Australia and grossed 287,000 Australian dollars in its first 4 days. On its opening weekend in the United States and Canada, Superman 2 broke box office records with a first-day gross of $4.3 million. The next day, it grossed $5.5 million, which at the time was the highest single box office day, surpassing the record previously set by Star Wars with $4.5 million. It also recorded the highest grossing weekend up to that time, with $14.1 million, surpassing the record $11.9 million set by Star Trek The Motion Picture, and a $13.1 million 4-day weekend set by Superman in its third weekend. The film remained number one for the next 3 weekends, outpacing Raiders of the Lost Ark, but Raiders eventually overtook it and returned to number one in its 6th week of release. In its first month of release, Superman 2 had grossed $75 million and went on to gross $108.2 million in the United States and Canada, with the gross rental coming to $65 million, the third highest grossing film of 1981. Internationally, it grossed $108.2 million for a worldwide total of $216.3 million. Just like the first film, an extended TV version of Superman 2 was released for the first time in 1984. It was through this extended version that viewers first caught a glimpse into the Superman 2 that might have happened had Richard Donner remained as director. In fact, a majority of the added footage was shot by Donner before Richard Lester became director. During the production of Superman Returns, Warner Bros. Acquired the rights from Marlon Brando's estate to use the late actor's footage from Superman in the film. Shortly after, Ilya Salkind confirmed that Donner was involved in the project to recut Superman 2 using Brando's unused footage. Editor Michael Thau worked on the project alongside Donner and Tom Mankiewicz, who supervised Superman 2 reconstruction. Despite some initial confusion, Thau confirmed that all the footage shot by Donner in 1977 was recovered and transferred from a vault in England. After Marlon Brando's death in 2004, his family estate allowed for Warner Bros. To feature archival footage of the late actor in the 2006 film Superman Returns, thus granting the studio permission to restore Donner's version of Superman 2. The new edition, titled Superman 2: The Richard Donner Cut, was released on November 28, 2006. It features a significant amount of discarded footage, alternative takes, and story elements not featured in the theatrical version. Superman 2 got a sequel 3 years later in 1983, titled Superman 3. With that being said, thanks for watching. Next time we'll be talking about Swamp Thing from 1982. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to see more, consider giving a like or rating and subscribing with notifications so you never miss an episode. It's free. Also feel free to check out our other episodes and share this podcast with others on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. We'll see you next time on Movie Rewind.